And this is my live event. We shouldn't call death. We should call it what's next. And it's based on my own near death experience. 1 second in intensive care, the next second, one with everything and nothing. I had two friends at the end of my bed on November 18th, and I had been in intensive care for 5 days at that point. Going back to November 13th, 5 days earlier, I was doing a seminar for my sales training clients. I had the license for a national sales training program. 1 second, I was fine. The next second, I needed an ambulance. And I had an overwhelming feeling of gratitude sweep over me. I had been studying the power of gratitude and practicing being grateful for things and even writing down daily things I was grateful for, and getting in the ambulance. I was grateful. In fact, even while I was waiting for the ambulance in my partner's office, I remember people asking me, "How you doing?" I said, I don't know how my body's doing." the the emergency, the EMTs said, "How are you doing?" when they got there, and I was lying on the couch. I said, same thing. I said, "I'm fine. I'm grateful. I don't know how my body's doing, but I'm grateful." And they thought for sure from their look on their face, they thought, he not only needs an emergency room doctor, he needs a shrink. Now, spoiler alert, I survived. And they took me to the Waltham Hospital. And no one warned me, sadly, about the tuna salad in the cafeteria. No, that's not why I flatlined. So I was going through acute necrotizing pancreatitis, had never had any symptoms. Imagine, right? Never had any symptoms. And then 5 days later, I had an anterior myocardial infarction. That's while I was in intensive care. Most people don't survive that, let alone acute necrotizing pancreatitis. And it began a journey of 100 days in the hospital, 60 days straight, except for one little break, a few hours out, maybe 10 hours out for Thanksgiving because my body felt a little better and they let me go. And then I was back Thanksgiving afternoon, and like I said, 60 days straight, except for that break, and 40 out of the next 60. I wasn't cleared to go to work till April, from November 13th, 2002. But in intensive care on the 18th, I had two friends at the end of my bed. I remember being in and out of consciousness that day. And then there was a moment where literally I had no body. And I call it our acorn brain now because I was without all that small-minded thinking that we all carry around. Ernest Holmes calls it the adversary, right? Within our own head and within my head, right? Judging people, making others wrong, making me wrong. And in the infinite, one with everything and nothing. 1 second in intensive care, struggling the next second. One with everything and nothing. One with the infinite, immense light. And then there was a life review. It was like a scene and a scene and a scene. There was no past and no future. Only the now. I call it the now on steroids. And in the life review, only the good I had done flashed before me. People I had smiled at, bought a sandwich for, given money to, helped move, family, friends, strangers, every life I had touched. Think about that. Only the good I had done. That's not what we hear. It's not what we read about. It's not what so many tell us. It's small-minded thinking that in a cause and effect universe, that we as a cause, if we do something negative, we pay here, cause and effect. But it's small-minded human thinking, hubris, egoic thinking that says, and I think you should burn in hell forever. That's not what I experienced. Think about how you feel when you do good. Only the good flashed before me. So somehow the good is etched onto the fabric of time. And the next scene was I was asked a question, stay or go. And I surrendered like no other moment in my body with thy will be done. It didn't matter. Thy will be done. Whatever was next. Stay there or go back. And I was right back in my body, still struggling. That was the 5th day. There was a long time to go yet. And later I asked my 2 friends. It was a day or 2 before I could ask them. The same 2 friends came to visit me almost every day. And I said, there was a day. I was in and out of consciousness, and then there was a moment. And they both said, oh, the nurses and doctors came running in. That was Monday, the 18th of November at around 2 o'clock, 2 p.m. And they said, out, this is it. Call his family. And of course, later, the doctors relayed to me that acute necrotizing pancreatitis I had survived, still many challenges, along with a major heart attack. And today, I have less than 10% of my pancreas. That was part of the journey. Eventually, in December, around Christmas time, I got a second opinion and surgery. But meanwhile, I had survived 2 major events, and today I have no symptoms. I have less than 10% of my pancreas remaining, but I have perfect assimilation and perfect elimination and no heart symptoms whatsoever. So I got the experience of a miracle, and that we live in a miracle. We live in something amazing, far beyond what our little acorn brain thinks about. And we have the hubris and the ego to think that God thinks like us. We are so far off. But what does that mean? Why do I think it's important? Well, I think overcoming small-minded thinking is very important. And you have to prove that to yourself, that everyone else's journey in life is none of your business. Only your journey is your business. And start to expand your thinking from small-minded, limited thinking into limitless, infinite thinking, matching what created this universe we live in. And there are so many examples of small-minded thinking today. I mean, just go to Russia and the war on Ukraine. It'd be like United States attacking Texas. After Texas seceded or California seceded, and 10 years later we decided, let's go attack them. Small-minded. But we have many examples of small-minded thinking. Separating people by race. There's a human race. Politics does that today, separating people by party or by cause. And neither side, I'm not for either side. They're all wrong. They're all they're not exempt. They're not displaying leadership qualities at all. It's not leadership to say they're wrong and we're right, and they're wrong and we're right. That's not leadership. That's a monologue. And a monologue is the story one tells themselves. A dialogue is what's needed. That's the joint creation of a reality. It would be a new reality for both sides. So I don't have to explain in detail how small-minded we are as a society from our leaders on down. And it's funny, they expect the populace to behave differently. Then you have elitism, people talking about, well, we'll pay $15 a gallon for gas. After all, I drive a Tesla. Some Hollywood actor, or I think he was a late night host, but that's elitism. That's we're right and all the others are wrong. What intelligence so great put oil and natural gas here? When I grew up and got my license in the late 70s, there was the word, we're going to run out of gas and oil. We're near the end. I think back then they said by the year 2000. And we found more and more and more. Why? Why? And it's much cleaner today because we've we as a country have cleaned up our auto emissions, but other countries aren't clean. How much carbon is China putting into the world, and Russia and India? And, the idea of going to clean and green, yes, great idea. We should all work to leave everything and everyone a little better than we find them, and especially our own neighborhoods, our own yards, and yes, collectively for the earth. But think about why there's an intelligence so much greater that provided us with fossil fuels and methane gas and natural gas. And why? Now, electric cars are a great idea, but did you know how lithium is mined? Flushing salt water into the earth, creating a sludge, which comes back up to the surface, and then the lithium is separated. Now, that is similar, exactly, by the way, the process, to fracking. And then many countries like China and Afghanistan, they strip mine for lithium. There's carbon from those efforts. And it's not healthy for the earth. It's not healthier than fracking. So why I think that we should be patient and gradually change, because I believe hydrogen fuel cells are the answer when they're perfected. I mean, certainly we would want them stable and not blowing up the family car, but there will come new ideas and a cleaner and greener world. But I remember smog alerts in New York City, and we don't have that today. We have much cleaner air because we've gradually made progress by changing what made sense, the emissions from our automobiles. And so, yes, while I think electric is wonderful, I don't believe it's the answer because of the impact that mining lithium has. And fuel cells will probably be the answer. And we're a ways away. But my point is not that. My point is we have people telling us it's one way or the other. That's a monologue. It's not a dialogue. And making everyone wrong when all of a sudden now gas is so expensive, we'd like to see the oil companies produce more. It's really funny to me. But the point is not about oil or gas. It's about the hypocrisy that both sides display in our leadership. But even leadership following blindly one religion or another, we still have religions, the same religion fighting different factions all over the world. Isn't the belief in something infinite that created an infinite miracle? We do live in a miracle, right? Remember? We're floating around on a globe that's smaller than this probably in representation to the universe size. I mean, there were physicists last month that said the sun is most likely the size of a grain of sand in relation to the size of the universe. So that marble is a large representation of the Earth. But think about it. Here we are floating around an exposed nuclear fusion plant called the sun. So the universe uses nuclear energy. Just a thought. And here we are floating around at the exact perfect spot that for life to occur here. And we have a rock floating around us that affects our tides. We live in a miracle and we forget it. We get so wound up and bound up in our little small-minded thinking that we have to make others wrong so we can be right. We have to point fingers. Instead of collectively working on compromises that will leave everything and everyone a little better than we find them. It's politics that is the cause of many problems. Religion, cults like Jim Jones, shall we drink the Kool-Aid? Or the Nike sneaker cult. Put your Nikes out so the mothership will know to take you. never blindly follow anything or anyone, and notice how small-minded that thinking is. Anything that makes others wrong collectively is small-minded. We have to get over this separation of races. It's a human race. Many races have made mistakes. Many races continue today. There's people in every race that kill each other and then kill others of other races. The bigger thing is to start talking about, how do we work to eliminate the idea of killing people to solve something? Where are we going wrong? Is it in the family unit? We have to have dialogue about it. Is it in places where there are no fathers? Is it somehow the pressures of raising a child in a single parent family? I don't know. But unless we have a dialogue, we won't begin the path of fixing things. And it's a dialogue that we don't have, and we haven't had it for years in our own Congress, our own leadership. Because we have career politicians, I believe we've got to eliminate that position. And at the International Maxwell Conference this week, John Maxwell said, maybe we should try no leadership from the federal level for 4 years and see how that works. Leave it to states. Let the governors get together to do for each state and see what happens. He said, probably, I suspect, we learn we don't need leadership. But let's lay them off for a few years. Like the general public gets laid off or shut down or locked down. Let's lay off the leaders for 4 years. Let each state run the state and see if we survive. But at least let's eliminate career politicians. Let's have term limits. Let's have publicly funded elections and eliminate donations and large dollar donations and all these people that want to influence elections. Let's eliminate lobbying and let's make elections public service. You can serve for one term, 8 years, Congress, Senate, or president. After that, you're out. Public service. You can serve locally, term limits as well, and publicly funded elections. Now, the news media will rail against that because think about how many billions are spent in advertising. Now there wouldn't be any advertising. What about the lobbyists and the big money companies? They'd be saying, wow, how do we get influence? And, the reason that there isn't a big deal when family members of a politician do something, either for their own benefit or the family's benefit, it's because politicians, the Congress has been doing it for years, subtly selling influence through their family members, providing them with jobs because they're career politicians. But we have to have a dialogue to start thinking a new way. I think we need new parties as well. But we also need to overcome small-minded thinking in our lives because we make judgments of neighbors, we make judgments of our coworkers. Think about small-minded thinking, what it does. How much energy and time do people waste on social media, railing against someone, right? Someone makes a post, everybody works to make them wrong, or a whole bunch of people that disagree. It's madness what small-minded thinking brings people to. So that's why I think it's important, because I think it'll change your life, though. We won't change everything around us, like Congress or the bigger things, pollution, until we individually clean up our lives and our thought process and change things. But that won't happen until you're willing yourself to have a dialogue on things. How can we expect our leaders to have a dialogue unless we begin to say, it's a dialogue we need. And it's time to change the way we think and look at everything. Making others wrong. Imagine in the workplace. I'm sure you have people that just make others wrong, and maybe it's you. Is it healthy for the company? Is it productive? But to bring limitless, infinite thinking with you everywhere and begin to challenge your own prejudices, your own small-minded, narrow-minded beliefs. Look at education. We have so many examples of even universities, but also teachers at the high school level and maybe even elementary, introducing things that they believe in politically, or making one whole group wrong that disagrees with them. We've had colleges that are supposed to be taking open minds, narrow minds, and making them open minds, shutting down certain sides of a dialogue instead of discussing it fully. They shut down one group or another that disagrees. Even people feeling not safe because someone disagrees with them. Imagine what we would learn if we all looked the same, sounded the same, and thought the same. We wouldn't learn anything. There'd be no growth in life. This is, by some, described by some as the life school. But it sounds like, and it seems to me like we've gone backwards with small-minded thinking. So I challenge you to begin the journey on your own. Prove it to yourself. Don't follow me blindly, and don't follow anyone blindly. And if I ever come on alive and say, I found the way, run away. It's your journey. I challenge you to begin expanding your thinking, looking at where you're so small-minded, where you're narrow-minded, and start to have a dialogue with people. In your family, maybe you're narrow-minded somewhere. At work, in the community, maybe you are a politician nationally. Think about it. We haven't advanced much, and it seems like we've regressed recently. And think about the experience I had that, first of all, here's what I learned. There was only the now, and the good I had done made a difference. Think about how you feel when you do good. And there was only the moment. People go searching for God or the divine or the goddess or the Buddha, the Brahma, the Abraham, the Mohammed, the Christ consciousness. They go on a search for it. It's in the now. That's all that existed on the other side. And what I learned was my big surrender to thy will be done. To the question, stay or go, thy will be done was a big surrender for me. Being totally in the moment. It didn't matter what was next. I accepted whatever in the moment. And I've continued to do that in my life, and that makes a difference. Is when something comes that doesn't match my picture and my acorn brain wants to rail against it, I just say, oh, this must be the plan, which Eckhart Tolle talks about in The Power of Now and in many of his YouTubes. He says, some people think reality is nuts. I think about that and chuckle. And then he says, when you fight life, life fights you. And when he says you get upset about something that's occurred, you could just say, wait, oh, this must be the plan. Wait, take a breath and say, oh, this must be the plan, and be with it in the moment. That's where the divine is. You know, nothing's out of order in the universe, because if it was, this whole thing would come flying apart. Can you imagine if the earth wobbled off its axis by an inch or less? It would all come flying apart. But we don't think our lives are in order. Everything is a gift in the moment, there to teach us something, and especially the people and the events that really bother us and challenge us. There's a learning in it if you take a break and reflect. What is the gift in this? What is it here to teach me? How can I grow from this experience? What would be new? It's to have questions. Like the book Osho wrote, Your Answers Questioned. That's the journey I challenge you all to take. Your answers questioned. You can bring it everywhere. But prove it to yourself, and you'll own it. Now, if you have any questions, you can email me, steve@stevelentini.com, steve@stevelentini.com. I have a couple podcasts. One is Different Thinking for Different Times. It's on all the podcast platforms. And then I have You May Be Full of Shit If. on all the platforms. Again, is another podcast where I question all this thinking. And that's where I've written the books. You may be full of shit if. You may be full of number 2. After all, we know better. The woke edition. They're on Amazon. I've also written Wake Up, Jump Into Your Life based on my near-death experience. I've written Helping People Buy, which is, again, a limitless thinking, because management has to think differently. Salespeople have to think differently, and it changes their outcome. It changes the reputation of their company. They become known for something positive, helping people buy. And management has to help people win under my system. They become known for something. What are you known for? Are you known for your small-minded thinking? Are you known for your narrow-mindedness? Are you known for railing against everybody who disagrees with you? Are you known for being uncomfortable during a challenge, in victim mode? You want to hear what happened to me today? And then if you have a friend that says, wait do you, I get that, but wait till you hear what happened to me. We can be masters of circumstance, as Werner Erhard said. In the Est work, the Forum, Landmark still continues that work today. We can be masters of circumstance or victims of circumstance. And the thinkers that are limitless thinkers, infinite thinkers, that model the creative force of the universe, whatever you call it, they're masters of circumstance. Their lives change. Even my dogs agree. Even the little one. You can make your life a joy by being in the moment and welcoming and celebrating everything that occurs as moving you and helping you. And there's plenty of moments we love, the people we love, the outcomes that occur that match our picture that we love, but there's reason to be happy with the people that challenge you. They're pushing you. They're bringing you a gift. Maybe they're showing you what you look like sometimes. Wayne Dyer said, when you squeeze an orange, you get orange juice. When humans get squeezed, when we get squeezed, he said, you get what you need to work on. That's how to embrace things that bug you and bother you. But again, don't take my word for it. Start to look at things a different way, or not. And if you'd like to be a guest on any of my podcasts, or just email me to challenge me, steve@stevelentini.com. That's Steve L as in Linda, E-N as in Nancy, T as in Tom, INI.com. And remember, on a podcast or in an email, I might just ask you, does that sound like small-minded thinking? Work on it. Prove it to yourself. Thanks.